And again, welcome to today's webinar, Introducing Amazon WorkSpaces. Our presenter is Paul Duffy, Senior Manager for Product Management with AWS. Paul, you have the floor.
Thank you, and good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're located. And thanks for your time in coming to this webinar. In this brief presentation today, we're going to provide you with an overview of Amazon WorkSpaces, a fully managed service providing desktops in the cloud. In the presentation, we're briefly going to talk about why WorkSpaces was built, the capabilities and benefits that it offers to you. We're going to show you a couple of demonstrations of how you can use WorkSpaces, talk about how you can integrate the WorkSpaces service with your existing infrastructure, show you a demonstration of how you can do that integration, and then we'll have time for some questions and answers that you'll be able to submit as we go through. So one of the first things is to highlight why we built the WorkSpaces service. And we did this based on feedback that we had from our customers. Many of our customers told us that although virtual desktops themselves are nothing new, being able to realize this virtual desktop dream, to be able to have virtual desktops that could be easily provisioned for end users without having to invest in lots of expensive hardware and software, and then do the deployment and management of that software, that they wanted to be able to do this more easily. So listening to our customers and building the services is the number one reason why we did this. It's increasingly popular with many of our customers for end users to bring their own device, and whether that's them bringing tablet devices, whether it's bringing PCs that aren't provided by the organization that they work for. This range of diverse devices which are brought by people is becoming more and more popular. We also find that workforces are becoming increasingly diverse. So we're not just having people who are going into a contact center or a corporate office where they work and use a PC that's been provided by their employer or the organization that they're associated with. We're having more and more organizations where the workforce might be distributed and might generally be working from home, but they still need to have access to the corporate resources, tools, and other utilities and data that they would use in their work life. More and more people are using tablet devices, but they also want to be able to use those tablets to have access to the same applications and data that they might be using with their desktops. And when we take some of these things together, being able to make sure that these desktops are all secure from the point of view of making sure that users' data, organizations' data doesn't leave those devices is a really important thing. So what does WorkSpaces offer to customers who choose to use it? It's a fully managed service, which means you don't have to go through all the effort of procuring the hardware and software and deploying and managing that hardware and software to provide your end users with virtual desktops. We take care of that heavy lifting for you, so it's easy for you to provision one or a number of virtual desktops when you need them. Users have a choice of multiple devices, so it's not just about having a PC or a Mac, a laptop or desktop, but also being able to use devices such as an iPad, a Kindle Fire HDX, or Android tablets. Being able to keep data secure and available. So at one level, that gives users the options to have their data continuously and securely backed up. But also from the point of view of an administrator, meaning that regardless of the device or the laptop or the desktop that end users are using, you can ensure that corporate data, unless you choose to have that on end user devices, doesn't remain on those devices. You have a choice of software and hardware bundles to give users the resources that they need. And you don't need to talk to us when you provision WorkSpaces, whether you're provisioning one or a larger number. You don't need to make some long-term commitment. You don't need to talk to us to tell us how many that you're going to provision. It's very easy with a few clicks in the AWS Management Console to get started. And then you can also integrate with a corporate directory, which is good for end users as they get to use the credentials they're already used to using. And it's good for administrators as well, because WorkSpaces can be managed just like other desktops that you're already used to managing. Some sample use cases that we've provided here, and these truly are samples, there are many more that we've heard from our customers, could include people using mobile devices to access their virtual desktops, making sure that you can have these devices that users bring, but your corporate data can remain in your on-premises data center or in the AWS cloud without staying on those end users' devices. Potentially having remote employees where you're not going to provide them with a physical corporate desktop, but you still want to provide them with all the applications and data that they use at their convenience. Workforces that might be seasonal. So if you hire a bunch of people and you need a set of desktops for those people for a small period of time in one part of the year, it's very easy to provision the right number of desktops for them, and then when those people stop using those desktops, you can just turn them off and stop paying for them. Students using workspaces, another use case we hear a lot of feedback from customers, along with developer workspaces, where you could potentially provide a virtual desktop to a developer so they can access source code, do their development work without that intellectual property being on a device that you don't want it to be. So when we talk about fully managed, it really is simple for you. You choose to launch the number of workspaces that you need for users. All the heavy lifting and provisioning the underlying virtual machines and preparation of those machines is taken care of by us. And when a workspace is ready, a user will receive an email so that they can install the client on the device that they wish to use and connect to their workspace. So instead of just talking about that, we're going to show you how you can provision a workspace. And we're going to do that by going in to the AWS Management Console. So here we can see the AWS Management Console, and I've selected the WorkSpaces service. And I've got a few workspaces that are already running. Now each of these workspaces is a virtual machine that's dedicated to that end user. So we have one here for Colin, for David, for me, and my colleague Jean. We see their names, we see the workspace bundle that's been selected, and we'll talk about what bundles are in a minute. But I'm going to show you how simple it is to launch some more workspaces. And we do that by starting with the Launch Workspaces button. Now the first question we're asked here is to select the directory that we want to use to launch a workspace. Now this is important because the directory I'm selecting here, corp.example.com, that's an existing Active Directory that I've integrated and connected to the Workspaces service. So I can choose a list of users who've already been defined in an Active Directory. They're already used to using a particular username and password, so they can continue to use those credentials when they're using their workspace. And this workspace will also join their Active Directory domain so that administrators can manage that in the same way that they're used to managing other desktops. So we're going to select that directory. And next we're going to choose the users that we want to provide a workspace for. So I'm going to search for my colleague Deepak, add one for him, my colleague Brian, my colleague Joy. So this time we're going to launch 3 workspaces. On the next page of this wizard, I now get the choice of bundles. Now bundles are a collection of software and hardware resources, and we have 2 families of bundles here, standard and performance. Performance bundles provide end users with more CPU, memory, and storage. And we also have a choice here between a plus variant for each bundle. And these plus variants come with more software installed. So you can see that these plus variants come with Microsoft Office Professional pre-installed. For Deepak here, we're going to start with a standard workspace bundle, which is $35 per workspace per month. Brian, we're going to give a standard plus workspace to, so he has software pre-installed. And we'll give Joy a performance plus workspace, so she has more CPU, memory, and storage, and also has applications pre-installed. And you can, of course, install the applications that you want to install on your workspace at any time. And you can use the existing tools that you're used to using to do that. So we'll review the workspaces that we want to launch. At this point, we're just going to launch 3. Click the Launch Workspaces button, and that will start the provisioning process. Now, it'll take about 20 minutes for those workspaces to be provisioned. When a user's workspace is provisioned, they'll typically receive an email similar to this one, which tells them what they need to do to get started. They download and install a Workspaces client for the device that they want to use, whether that's a PC or a Mac or a tablet device. They register this client, and then they log in with their credentials. Now, because the directory I'm using here is an existing Active Directory, they can log in with the same credentials. So I'm going to show you here, using the Workspaces client, what that experience looks like. So I'm going to put my username and password in, which is the existing Active Directory username and password that I'm used to using. Then in a few seconds, we'll connect to that workspace, and I'll talk you through the experience that you can see there. So here we are. Looks like a regular desktop here running Windows. So I could, for example, start up a web browser if I wanted to browse the web using my workspace. And I could look at the Workspaces website or anywhere else I wanted to look at the internet. I could start up Outlook. And when I connect to Outlook here, although this looks like it's a pretty straightforward scenario, I've just started up Outlook and I'm using it, this is connected to an existing Exchange server that's part of a corporate Active Directory. So it's using the same username and password. It's connecting to my existing Outlook mailbox. So from the perspective of a user, I'm not doing anything different than what I've used to be using before on my regular desktop. But I can do this from a choice of different devices. We could load up Word, we could load up the Word document I have on the desktop here. All these applications behaving in exactly the way that I'm used to using them. I could choose to annotate this document if I wanted to rework the graphics, and so on. So from a user point of view, very, very consistent experience. I'm just going to disconnect from that workspace now and go back into our presentation. So with a few mouse clicks there, we demonstrated how you can provision a workspace. We didn't have to do anything to tell AWS that you needed to have a number of workspaces. We went from starting in the console, launching a workspace, and then about 20 minutes later, those 3 workspaces that I provisioned are all going to be ready. Now, as well as the desktop device, and that's the demonstration that I provided there, we also provide support for multiple other devices, and that includes iPads, Kindle Fire HDXs, which you can use with a keyboard and mouse, Android tablets, and then also the Microsoft Windows or Mac OS laptops or desktops that users can use. So it's not just about having those traditional desktop devices. So I'm going to show you another demonstration now. And this demonstration is going to be a pre-recorded video to show you the iPad experience because it's difficult for me to project one of those devices with the webinar system that we have. So I'm just going to show you what that experience looks like on the iPad. So this time, we start the client on an iPad, we put the credentials in. Don't worry, this is a fake account, so the password you're seeing is not going to get you access to anything watching this webinar. But luckily it will in this video show how we can connect with this iPad to that same experience. So when we connect now, we're back on a desktop, and this desktop looks very similar to the desktop that I was using before. And that's because one of the capabilities of Workspaces is that these desktops are persistent. So if you move from one device to the other, in this example where I might have been in the office using my laptop, and I've done some work on my workspace, I want to go to a meeting, and here I am, back in my inbox, back in that Word document, exactly where I was before. But we've also made some optimizations to the client so that you can use a touch device for a desktop experience that wasn't designed for touch. We have a pop-out keyboard. We have a slide-out radial control that gives you access to things like mouse mode and the Windows key. And then you can also use any of the other applications that you might choose to use on a regular desktop. In this case, we're going to show you a demonstration using MS Paint, one of my favorite applications. So you can access all of those same applications and data and have the same experience across different devices without having to restart your session and without losing things like persistence. So that's the mobile device experience. And very, very easy for users. Just download the client they want to use and get started. We also make it easy to keep data secure and available. So we use the PC over IP protocol for Workspaces, which means that only pixels are delivered to end users. Unless you choose otherwise, data isn't stored on end user devices. So you can make sure and set your policies to keep data in your on-premises data centers or in the AWS cloud. And then we also back the user volume to Amazon S3 to make sure that that data is going to be available in the case of any underlying hardware issues and so on. We also have a capability called Workspaces Sync. Workspaces Sync is a client that securely backs up and syncs users' data. You can install it on the Workspaces client and then also install the same client on a PC or a Mac, so users' data is automatically, securely, and regularly backed up, stored in Amazon S3 for durability, But users can also use the sync capability here. So they're not just backing up their data. They also have the ability to access it when they need it from a set of different devices. They could start off on using their My Documents folder on their workspace and choose the folder that they want to synchronize. And then they could install the sync client on another PC or another Mac so that they can easily get access to those same documents without having to go through a complicated procedure to share. You also have the choice of the software and hardware resources that you need. So we saw in the demonstration just before a choice of bundles. And as I said, we have the standard bundles and the performance bundles. You can see in the hardware resources column of this table that the performance bundles have more CPU, RAM, and user storage than the standard bundles. And the plus variant out of each bundle, as you can see in the third column, the applications column, comes with more software pre-installed. And you can install software when you like at your convenience. But if you find it easier to have a workspace like the one that I showed you in the demonstration, which was a Performance Plus workspace, it's easy for you to have that experience. And as I say, you can install your own software. So there are no technical restrictions on software installation on an Amazon workspace. And when you have corporate directory integration, you can use the tools that you're already used to using to distribute that software. So if you're using something like Microsoft System Center, if you're used to using a homegrown package, if you're used to using a particular antivirus package that is what you'd like to keep using in your organization, you can use the tools you're already using to distribute. You may need to check with your ISV to make sure there are no concerns with doing that. If your ISV doesn't support your software on workspaces, please do ask them. There are no restrictions that we're putting in place there, and we really want you to be able to use whichever software you'd like to on your workspace. The pricing model for Workspace is one where you pay as you go. There are no long-term commitments. There's no minimum commitment to having to deploy 20 workspaces or a larger number. There's no reason for you to have to call us or speak to a sales representative just to be able to launch your first workspace. You can do it just as I showed you in the demonstration in the console. And here you can see the prices ranging from $35 a month where we start for the standard workspace all the way up to the Performance Plus version. And when you're finished with your workspaces, you can delete them anytime that you want. And what's included in that simple monthly price is the infrastructure, the compute, the storage, and bandwidth. And if you've chosen one of the Performance Plus bundles, you're paying for access to those applications as well. One of the other features that we've heard from customers is really useful in a corporate environment is Workspaces Connect. And what this does is integrates with an existing Active Directory. And this provides a set of different benefits for different people. From the perspective of an end user, it means, as you saw in the demonstration, that a user can use the existing enterprise credentials, their username and password, that they've been used to using since they were provisioned in the corporate directory. So they can have seamless access to SharePoint, to existing applications that are running inside your organization, and they don't need to use a different username or password. From the point of view of IT, you get to control workspaces just like regular desktops in your organization. And we'll show you in a demonstration a little bit later in this presentation how you'll see those workspaces in the organizational unit you want to store them in Active Directory, and you can manage them with the tools that you use to managing other desktops in your organization. Active Directory integration is pretty straightforward from a value proposition point of view. If you're going to use group policy, software distribution tools, installing agents for monitoring operations and so on, just keep doing that the way you're used to doing it. You don't need to change the way that you manage these desktops. You just get away from some of the heavy lifting in having to do the provisioning work for those desktops. To do the actual integration, it's relatively straightforward. You need to make sure that your existing Active Directory is reachable, and typically our customers will do that via an Amazon Virtual Private Cloud VPC, potentially connecting to their infrastructure with a hardware VPN connection. Now that could be domain controllers that are in your on-premises network. You might choose to locate those domain controllers in Amazon EC2 if you want to do that for latency or performance reasons. It's totally up to you. You make the choice that's the best one for your infrastructure. Then you configure the Workspaces Connect capability in the service, and once you've done that, the process of launching those workspaces in the connected domain is exactly as simple as I showed you in the demonstration a little bit earlier. To show you a kind of high-level diagram of how this looks, you can see on the left side of this screen, users are coming in from the outside over the internet to connect to their workspaces, and you can see their workspaces are highlighted in this part of the architecture here. We've got one workspace in one subnet in one availability zone, another one over here. And the Workspaces Connect service connects from those VPC subnets, potentially across the VPN connection, to the on-premises domain controller. So it gets the list of users when you're joining, you're launching the workspaces in that domain. And then when the workspaces themselves are launched, they will join the existing Active Directory domain. Now, the account that you need to configure as part of that integration, it's not a dissimilar model to having the person who in the old days would have physically gone and deployed that workstation in a branch office where they have a set of credentials that are very limited, and all those credentials will do is allow them to join the domain. The same kind of thing with Workspaces Connect. You give it that very restricted, constrained user account, and all it's doing that is to list those users, and the workspaces join the Active Directory domain, and the users use the same credentials, their corporate Active Directory credentials, to connect. In terms of accessing resources, once that process is complete, those workspaces can access resources that are either in your on-premises network, so all of the internal applications that they're used to using, and they can also access resources that might be deployed in Amazon EC2. So that could include any EC2 instances that you're using to run any of the applications that support your business. You could also locate Active Directory domain controllers for your existing Active Directory inside Amazon EC2. It's absolutely your choice. You don't need to deploy them in EC2 to facilitate this connection, but it's a choice if you would like to do that. So I'm going to give you another quick demonstration now that shows what that corporate Active Directory integration is like. So we're going to go back into the Workspaces Management Console. And this time I'm going to switch to another region where I don't have a directory configured. So we're going to this time switch to the Northern Virginia region. This is a kind of starting state where I don't have any workspaces that are configured so far. And I'm now going to select directories from the left tab here. Now, we have two choices for directories with workspaces. And this will become obvious when I choose to set up a directory. One of the things that, and if you start using workspaces with our easy getting started experience, or you're starting from scratch, you can either connect with Workspaces Connect to connect your workspaces with your existing Active Directory, or you can use a cloud directory. And a cloud directory is a directory that's managed by the Amazon Workspaces service on your behalf. So if you want to get started quickly with virtual desktops, with workspaces, you can create one of these directories, you can add users in it, and then easily provision a workspace for them. And there's no integration configuration that you have to do there. Very, very simple way to create it. With Workspaces Connect, this is how we connect to an existing Active Directory domain. So we'll start that by clicking on the Connect directory. We're going to give it an organization name, which is my example org. We're going to give it the DNS name of that domain, which for my example is corp.example.com. Give it a net BIOS name. We're going to give it a username. In this case, this is the very, very restricted account name that I'm going to use for listing those users and joining those workspaces to the domain. Put the password in that's associated with that account. Give two DNS server addresses so that the Workspaces service can find domain controllers in your environment. So I'll put my first in here. And then I need to confirm the VPC that I want to use that will connect back up to my corporate Active Directory. So that's this VPC here, and select two subnets which are going to connect back up. So I'm using 10.0.3 and 10.0.0. Click Continue. We'll review these examples, and these are relatively simple choices. I put in an organization name, the name of my directory, DNS name of my directory, the net BIOS name for that, the username and password that I'm going to use to join these workspaces to the domain, information about the VPC, click Connect Directory, and that will start the process to connect that directory. And then going back to the other region, once that is done, I'm not going to make you wait for the few minutes it's going to take to connect that. Then you'll see the directory like this one here. If I look at the properties, I can see that it's a connect directory. I can see the DNS addresses that I've used to find the domain controller and connect there. I can see that it's active. And that means when I'm going to launch workspaces, and you can see most of the workspaces I launched earlier are already running, this is what I'm selecting when I have this list of directories, corp.example.com. And when I'm selecting users from this directory, the corp.example.com directory, that is the one that I have selected. And I'm just going to switch into showing you the Active Directory view of that. So here we're looking at the Active Directory users and computer snapping. So for anybody who's not familiar with Microsoft Active Directory, this is the standard utility that we use to do that. Here I've got my workspaces users. I've got an organizational unit here called Engineering Team Workspaces. And these computer accounts you're seeing here, these represent the workspaces that have joined my Active Directory domain. So I can manage these, I can use the same tools, whether it's something here as simple as the computer manager to look at the system event log on my workspace, whether it's using something like the System Center to deploy applications, whether it's using whatever management tool I'm already used to using. So for me, here I am connecting to the event log, doing all the kinds of things that I would do before. I get to use the same, as an administrator, I get to use the same tools to manage the workspaces that join my domain. As a user, I get to have seamless access to the internal applications, my email, whichever other applications are provisioned without having to do anything different, without having to use a different set of credentials. So really, really straightforward for the end user and good for the administrator. So that concludes the demonstration, and we're getting towards the end of this overview session for workspaces. So how do you get started? Well, the first time that you'll use the workspaces, you'll select the workspaces icon in the AWS Management Console. You'll be presented with a choice of using our Quick Start experience. And if you do this, this will create all the infrastructural components, the directory in the cloud, for you to easily be able to evaluate and launch your first workspace. If you want to do a more comprehensive evaluation, you can integrate with a corporate Active Directory, assuming that you have domain controllers in your VPC or domain controllers that are accessible over a connection. It's a pretty simple process to do that kind of integration. Then when you're selecting, you're choosing the users for the workspaces that you're provisioning, you choose the appropriate bundles for them, you launch the number of workspaces, whether it's one or a much larger number. The Workspaces service will do all the heavy lifting of provisioning those workspaces for you, and users can receive an email when the workspace is ready for them to connect. And then all they need to do is download the client of their choice, whether it's for desktop, laptop, or mobile tablet device, and then connect to their workspaces. And if they're using the integration with an existing directory, they don't even need to use different credentials. So really straightforward way for users to connect. Workspaces is now available to all customers, and we announced this availability a couple of weeks ago in San Francisco. It's initially available in 2 AWS regions, US East 1, which is our region in North Virginia, and US West 2, which is our region in Oregon. And we'll be adding support for further regions as we go forward. So to recap what we covered here, Amazon Workspaces is now available for all our customers to try. It provides you with fully managed desktops in the AWS cloud. You don't need to make an upfront commitment in terms of the number of workspaces that you need. You don't need to talk to a sales rep to make that happen. It's very easy for you to provision the number of workspaces you want in minutes. And we showed you a demonstration of how straightforward that was, how you could select between different bundles of hardware and software. You can sync your data between workspaces and other devices if you want to let your users do that. They have a choice of devices to use as well as laptops or desktops. They can also use tablets, whether it's an iPad, a Kindle Fire HDX, or an Android tablet. And then you can also, with a simple integration process, integrate with a corporate Active Directory so users can use the same credentials they're always used to using, and administrators can manage those workspaces like other desktops. We hope you found this short overview presentation useful, and we'll be more than happy now to spend a few minutes taking questions.
Thank you, Paul, for a great presentation, and thanks to the audience for your questions. As Paul reviews the questions, let's launch today's poll. The first question, what is the topic you would like to learn next?
So I'm just taking a minute to read through the questions here, and then I will call them out and try my best to answer them. So it's great that we've seen a bunch of questions here, so let me have a look. Okay, so where is the first question? I will start. So the first one was the availability of European Union-based workspaces. So right now, the service is available in 2 regions in the United States, one in Oregon and one in Northern Virginia. We will be adding support for other regions in the future. We don't have a specific date that we would communicate right now. Next question, can a small business of only one person utilize workspaces? And yes, the answer to that question is yes. You can provision one workspace, you can provision many workspaces. You choose the number that is the right number for your business. We hope we've put the right kind of features in to meet the needs of your business. If we haven't, please use the feedback button in the service to do that. Next question was what types of corporate credential integration are supported? So today, this just integrates with an existing Active Directory. So users can use the same username and password that they have had. There's nothing special that has to be done on the Active Directory side. It's the same username and password that users would want to do that. Can you upgrade to Plus if you originally provisioned a standard workspace? No, at this stage, if you start with a standard workspace, you need to remove that workspace and then launch a Plus one afterwards. The next question was around persistency. So today, the Workspaces service is persistent. So you launch a workspace, you assign it to a particular user, and then that is persistent across the devices that the user is using. So if they sign in on a laptop, and then they sign in on a desktop, or they sign in on a mobile device, that will be persisted across those different sessions like we saw in the demonstration. If an admin wants to install certain licensed software later, how do you push it out? And the answer there is, if the workspaces are joined to a corporate Active Directory, you can use the same tools that you're already used to using. So if you're using something like System Center to deploy software, or you're using a homegrown or software from another vendor, you use the same tool. So if you're doing software deployment based on organizational units, and you put your workspaces in the OU that's your choice, you can push it out the same way you push it out to other desktops. If the workspaces are not joined to a corporate domain, then you can install the software in however the users would like to do that. I presume this will work in a VPC so you can access the corporate network. Yes. So when you deploy workspaces, they'll have a network interface in a VPC, and you can access, just like the service connects back through to a corporate Active Directory to join the domain, users will be able to use whichever application. So assuming that you want to permit that, if it's email, if it's ERP software, whatever it is on the corporate network, can keep doing that. Mentioned earlier that regardless of the number of desktops, you don't need to contact Amazon. Yes, you don't. So there is a default limit in the number of workspaces that you can launch when you first open your account, but there's a simple form if you want to up that limit. It's just a kind of a one-time thing that you need to fill in. But certainly for the starting thing, you don't need to contact us. Definitely don't need to get on the phone to anybody to do that. What if we're not using Active Directory? Is there a requirement? No, you don't have to use Active Directory. You can use the cloud directory that we talked about that's managed by the Workspaces service on your behalf. But if you want to integrate with an existing on-premises Active Directory to make it easier for your users, you can do that as well. I'm just continuing to read through the questions here. The new machines will exist as objects in Active Directory. Do group policies work? Yes, the machines will, like in the last part of the demonstration, you'll see those machines in your Active Directory using whatever management tools you're using. So you can apply group policies to them just like you would to another desktop. What display protocol are you using to connect to the desktop? We're using the Teradici PC over IP protocol for that. Is the storage persistent in all workspaces options? Yes, the storage is persistent. What are the Microsoft Active Directory domain trust models that we support? Our focus is just on getting the service connected to your Active Directory domain and joining those workspaces to the domain. And we've got some documentation that you can find on the AWS website that talk in more detail about exactly how you can do that. If you don't have an existing Active Directory, how do you set up the accounts? If you use our Quick Start experience, a cloud-based directory will be created for you. So you certainly don't need to have an existing Active Directory to do this. Can I create a custom bundle or a template that has software pre-installed for each workspace? Today, you have a choice of 4 different bundle options: Standard, Standard Plus, Performance, and Performance Plus. So at this stage, those are the 4 choices that you have. One question is, if you, wait, let me find the, I've lost my place in this. When you create a workspace for a user, is the email automatically generated or is it a manual process? So today, if the workspace is a cloud, is based on the cloud directory, the email is automatically sent to the user. If you've integrated with an existing Active Directory, then we want to give you the choice to send that using whichever email workflow you want. So you can get that, that template from the console and send that out. If we install custom software for our users, is that installation persistent between sessions? Yes. So once you launch a workspace, install whatever software you like, and that will persist when a user disconnects or not. There was one question that said, how will you help customers to move across to a virtual environment, customers who have existing applications that may not be supported? Our expectation there is there won't be application work that will have to be done. I mean, if you currently are using on-premises desktops and you'd like to deploy some virtual desktops in the AWS cloud, if you launch these virtual desktops, if you launch these workspaces and you do the integration with an existing Active Directory, you will, those applications, as long as they're supported by the operating system, the Windows 7 experience provided by Windows Server 2008 R2, as long as the software is supported by that operating environment, there's nothing special from an application compatibility point of view, so we don't expect that to be complex. Do I have the ability of installing software onto the workspace if there's something a user needs that isn't installed? Yes. We don't make any technical restrictions. As long as you've got appropriate licensing to install those applications, you can install what you want. You can install it manually. You can install it using the software distribution method that you're already using. What size of customers are we going to be aiming this at? This is a service we've built for customers across a wide variety of different sizes. Some customers who might have a very small number of workspaces and some larger customers who might integrate with existing Active Directories. So there's no, it's not that this is designed for a specific size. You can start small and grow big. So there's no restrictions there. Can we install domain software to clients using group policy? Yes, you can. If your workspaces join your existing Active Directory domain, you can use group policy just as you're used to doing that. Can we install applications like Thunderbird or Photoshop? So, I mean, the answer to can you install applications on your workspace is basically, as long as you're licensed and the software is the software supports the operating environment for workspaces, yes, you can. We use Wise P20 clients. Are these compatible with workspaces? Today, the only clients that you can use to connect to Amazon Workspaces are PC and Mac, so Windows 7, Windows 8, Mac OS, and iPads, Kindle Fire HDXs, and Android tablets. You can find full details of that on the WorkSpaces website. In the demo, it looked like Windows 7, and you're offering Windows 7. So WorkSpaces provides the Windows 7 experience that's provided by Windows Server 2008 R2. Is there a Linux bundle? Today, no, there is no Linux bundles. The choices you have are all Windows-based. We can use whatever software we like, but what about licenses? You could, again, yes, you can use whatever software you like. You just need to make sure that you're licensed appropriately, and in many cases, that's not going to be any different than just installing this on regular desktops. Can you customize your own bundle? Today, no, you can't. You have the choice of bundles to start with. You can definitely install whatever software you like on them once you're started, but you can't customize further. How does the mouse PC experience translate over the iPad versus a PC? So in the section of the demonstration that you saw, you saw where we showed the mobile experience on an iPad. There are a couple of different mouse modes that you can select with that slide-out radial control, direct mouse support or offset, that are just different options for different users' preferences. So I'd encourage you just to try those options and see which suits you the most. We plan to create a VPC which is bridged to our corporate LAN, which would, in AWS terms, would mean you're connecting with a VPN connection. Can WorkSpaces be used within that sort of environment? Absolutely, yes. That's a core scenario that customers use. More. Is there support for internal Windows file server shares that adhere to user and group permissions set up in Active Directory? Yes. Again, the answer is these workspaces will join an existing Active Directory domain. So assuming that you've got network connectivity to the file server that you want to connect to, when a user connects to that file server, they're using the same Active Directory credentials. So yes, whatever permissions they had, those permissions will work the same way. A question said, when I was doing the demonstration, I used a search feature that pulled in information. That data was being taken from the Active Directory that I'd integrated with. So before I presented the webinar, I'd connected to an existing Active Directory domain. So when I was searching for users, the service was doing that search in an existing Active Directory. There's a question about are those retail prices. So the prices that's shared in the presentation on the website, they are the standard, they are the prices for the service. Can we put in two-factor authentication for WorkSpaces? To note today, the authentication is username and password based, whether that's a cloud directory or an existing on-premises Active Directory. Are multiple monitors supported by the client? Yes, multiple monitors are supported. Do you need a client application to access WorkSpaces? Yes, you do need a client application. So users can download a client for Mac OS or Windows, or for an iPad, Kindle Fire HDX, or Android tablets. What about remote software installation? So remote software installation, if the workspaces are in an existing corporate Active Directory, software installation can be performed just the way that you would always do that. Is there a Linux client for WorkSpaces? No, today the clients supported are Windows, Mac OS, iPad, Kindle Fire HDX, and Android tablets. How do you attach a network drive? If you're integrated with an existing Active Directory, you attach a network drive in exactly the same way as you would with any other desktop in your organization. Whether that's the net use command, it's done through the Windows shell. Can you connect the workspaces to an existing VPC? Yes, if you already have a VPC created, that's the VPC that would ultimately be used to get back to your corporate Active Directory. Is it possible to buy more compute power that, other than what's in the bundles that we offer? No, at this point, the 4 bundles are the choices that you have available when you launch a workspace. Can workspaces access EC2 instances where applications are deployed? Yes, as long as connectivity is available between your VPCs and you want to enable that, you can do that. What support is available for workspaces? Customers can use AWS support if they want space with workspaces. A number of questions. Can I load, this specific example is, can I load Sage 50 on Amazon Workspaces? And again, the answer is there's no technical restriction in terms of the software you can install. As long as you're licensed to use your software and the operating system support is right, yes, you can. Can you add more disk space to individual workspaces? No, at this stage, the storage that's offered in the bundle is the storage that you have. Can you customize workspaces like you can with EC2 instances and add multiple network interfaces? No, in that sense, the desktops are fully managed services, so you're not just provided with an instance that you have to customize. The service manages that for you. There's a question whether the computer name of the workspace can be changed, and currently the answer to that question is no. What is the latency to use workspaces? We've got information I would refer to in our documentation for recommended from a network connectivity point of view. How do I create my own bundles different to the 4 that are there? At this stage, the 4 bundles that the service provides are the 4 choices, so that you can't create additional bundles at this point. The question was, just lost my place in the list. Do all users receive the same registration number? So the way that this works is the clients are registered to the directory. So we create the directory in the management console, and it could be a cloud directory or a connected directory. The clients are registered to the directory, and then based on the username, the user is connected to the appropriate workspace. How are upgrades handled if Office is out of date? How will that be handled? So we configure the workspaces with some default settings for software updates for Windows, for example, but we also give you full control. So you can do patch management, you can do updates based on your corporate policy, so you're not forced to do that. Favorite question here, would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or 100 horse-sized ducks? Don't know how WorkSpaces feels about that, but I like the question. Will this work with Chrome OS, for example, a Chromebook? So today's supported clients are, as I said, Mac OS, Windows, iPad, Kindle Fire HDX, and Android tablets. What platforms does the Sync client support? It supports Windows and Mac. Can the directory be connected to an AD on an EC2 instance? So the Workspaces service can integrate with an existing Active Directory. That could be with domain controllers located in your on-premises network. It could be that those domain controllers are located in EC2. From the point of view of the service, we don't care. It will integrate with whichever topology you prefer, whether your domain controllers are in EC2 or they're over a VPN connection. Can we lock down so no data can be downloaded or uploaded? So that's a little bit of an open-ended question. The basic answer is you can restrict by policy all the kind of group policy settings you would restrict on a standard Windows desktop. So if the question is, can you set highly restricted policies for those things, then the answer to that question is yes. Can we create a custom AMI, custom bundle to launch Workspaces preloaded with company software? No, at this stage it is the 4 bundles that we have. Can multiple users access the same Workspaces VM? The model here is that you provision a workspace and that's dedicated to a specific user. Since AWS is available over the cloud, why are we saying this is available only in 2 locations? So as the service has relatively recently been made available to all customers, to start with, it's being made available, the actual instances that the workspaces will be, where the workspaces are, that users would connect to, they would currently be in one of those 2 regions, our Northern Virginia region, US East 1, or US West 2, which is in Oregon. If our company doesn't use a domain controller, can we still use Amazon Workspaces? Yes, you can. You can use a cloud-based directory. There's no requirement for you to do integration if you don't want to do that. How can I mass deploy applications with a third-party tool? So if you're in an environment where you've integrated with Active Directory and you were going to launch, hundreds or thousands of workspaces, you could use whatever software deployment system you're already using. So if you're going to deploy, you could choose to locate your workspaces in an organizational unit if you're going to do the software that way. Can workspaces be configured in a non-persistent configuration? Today, workspaces are persistent, as we showed in the demonstration. So when you connect from another client, you start exactly where you left off. It's the OS Windows 7, 8, or Server OS. So Workspaces provides the Windows 7 experience, which is provided by Windows Server 2008 R2. How do I get help setting up the VPC to our corporate Active Directory? This is if you're familiar with Amazon VPC, this is a relatively simple process. I mean, if you were going from nothing, you would create the VPC and you would create a hardware-based VPN connection back to your on-premises network. And once that connectivity is working, when you set up Workspaces Connect, it's just a matter of providing the right kind of DNS server addresses. There's a question about how printing works. So today, if you have a workspace that's connected to a corporate Active Directory that has a network printer set up, you can print via that. You could use any kind of internet-based printing option. So today, there is not local printing from the perspective of the client. Do workspaces have unrestricted access to the internet? It's up to you. So if you start with our quick start experience, that just gets you some workspaces quickly that would have full access to the internet. But if you are, if you're provisioning the workspaces individually, based on the VPC rules, whether you want to use a NAT server for access, totally up to you. Can I install any line of business app that I want to deploy to the users on workspaces, and how do you know if it's compatible with workspaces? So again, we don't make any technical restrictions there. If it's compatible with the operating environment of workspaces, which is the Windows 7 experience provided by Server 2008 R2, and you're licensed appropriately, you're good to go. You're good to go there. We're just going to take 2 more questions as we're running out of time. How is the connectivity to other systems? Can we use FTP clients, access to other S3 accounts and buckets? And in that sense, the workspaces, they are running the Windows operating system. They have connectivity into your VPC. So yes, if they have access to those resources from a networking point of view, there's nothing special that's going on there. I'm just looking for a question that hasn't been asked before. And the last question is the pricing one. So the pricing is pretty simple. It's based on the number of workspaces that you provision and the fact that they're running, and it's as simple as that. There is a charge per workspace per month. And with that, I am afraid we are out of time for any more questions. Hope you found the presentation useful, and I encourage you to try Workspaces today.
Great, thank you, Paul. I'd like to extend a special thanks to all our attendees. Within the next day or 2, you will receive an email with the links to the recording and more information. If you have any comments on our previous and upcoming webinars or suggestions on the topics you wish AWS may cover in future webinars, please feel free to email aws